Richard Taylor is a political blogger from Cambridge who used social media to raise awareness of the election. Richard, good morning to you.
Good morning, Andy.
Now, I know that you've had a lot to say about this since it was first announced, and certainly in recent weeks. Let's just first of all talk about turnout. You did your bit, we did our bit, the local paper did their bit, but still 15% max. Why do you think?
Well, I think a lot of people haven't necessarily understood the role is not about operational policing, which is something that perhaps the Home Office adverts and things suggested. And a lot of people don't want an elected politician involved in operational policing, so they've decided not to vote in these elections. Whereas the role is really all about strategy and oversight and policy. It's about the kind of things that an elected representative should be involved in. But I just don't think that's got across to the public. I think that's a big part of it.
So when people say, well, it doesn't matter, it's not important, well, in many ways, it is important because they will have, as you just said, input when it comes to strategy, and they will be earning quite a large amount of public money.
Well, it's certainly important in terms of setting the police strategy. They'll have their own salary, but even more than that, they'll have a huge amount of patronage. They'll be able to appoint people to various staff jobs within their own office, and that could run to many hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of money. And they can also appoint deputies who will have power as well, and they will also have salaries. And my concern is that although we may end up with a commissioner in Cambridgeshire with only a single-figure percentage of the electorate having voted for them, they'll still be able to appoint perhaps their friends and party colleagues to highly paid deputy and staff positions. And it's just the kind of thing that I don't think should go on. I don't think they'll have the mandate to do that.
So many people got in touch with us over the weeks and said this should not be political. And yet, if it hadn't been political, you'd have known nothing about the candidates at all. I mean, all we knew about the candidates was Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Independent or whatever. Is this something which should not have been political in your view?
Well, this comes back to what I said at the start. Now, of course, we've got to have somebody deciding how public money is spent and what the overall policies and strategy are. And the way we do that in our society is via democracy and via elected representatives. So, of course, there's some politics involved there. Like politics is just about how we run our society. But I think what people who've stayed at home or spoiled their papers have said is that they don't want politics involved in running the police. And I think the concern is that this role would go beyond that kind of strategy, oversight, taking care that we spend public money well, and get involved in directing policing. Or what people have said is we don't want an elected figure taking too close a role in sort of directing where police go, for example. Like, do we have more police on the streets? Do we want to move more police to rural areas? And those kind of things, which I think people are quite rightly saying should be left to a professional chief constable.
Now, as I said, one common thread was it shouldn't be political. The other was, well, we heard nothing about the candidates. The point to make, of course, is, though, that if the government had said you are going to receive literature from every candidate, then that would once again have necessitated dipping into the public purse, wouldn't it? And so you know, you can't have it both ways. You must be prepared for money to be spent if you want to know about the candidates, and yet we don't like money being wasted.
Well, it's certainly been an incredibly expensive election as it is. I think every vote in Cambridgeshire cost about £20 each, my rough calculation. But it's very difficult. There's an 800,000 population, about 600,000 people on the electoral roll. To actually get in touch with all those people is incredibly difficult, and only those with a lot of money and a lot of party volunteers would be able to do it. Now, there's been a bit of an experiment carried out here where the election statements have been put online by the Home Office, but it does appear that hasn't worked. Even very people who are engaged online on Twitter and on Facebook have been upset about the fact that they've been asked to proactively go and look at these statements rather than have them sent to them. So I think that's something to look at after this election. People seem to want the candidates to put a physical leaflet through the door, and if that hasn't happened, they seem to think that the candidates aren't putting the effort in.
Indeed.
Even though that would have been incredibly expensive and difficult to do with an almost 600,000 electorate.
Finally, Richard, who initially was enthusiastic about this? Because all the political parties have sort of distanced themselves, haven't put too much into it, but somebody somewhere at some stage must have thought this is a good idea.
Well, it's in the coalition agreement between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. That's how it came about. And I think the Conservatives thought that this would introduce localism, but of course it hasn't, because who's got a real local connection to the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Police Force area? I don't think anyone has. So if they wanted real localism, I think they should have strengthened the role of local councillors in policing is the way that I would have done it. And I would hope that with the very low turnout that we've got and the low mandate that the elected commissioner will have, that's the kind of thing that they'll do, that they'll have to say, well, where is the democratic mandate here? It's in our existing elected representatives, it's in our councillors. Let's use those and involve those more in setting the police priorities and overseeing the police.
Richard, I've read you very regularly. It's been good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining us. That's Richard Taylor, a political blogger.